Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. It's time to talk about Xiudao practice. I have been focusing on introducing some specific topics for the last couple of Xiudao videos, instead of the previous practice approach. For the last two videos, I introduced Nui Dan Fa, the female elixir practice, and Shui Gong, the sleeping style of Xiudao practice. Today, I will introduce different schools and their development of Xiudao practice. It is an important topic since this topic will give you a clear picture of different styles or schools of Taoist internal elixir practices based on different categorization methods. Without understanding this topic, practitioners can easily get lost when dealing with different practice methods. A specific practice method has its own specific background of learning and development. Understanding this topic will help you understand the inner relationship between different schools as well as their practices. But first, let's warm up with Dao De Jing commentary and Xiudao. Today, we will talk about four important sentences in chapter 3. 虚习心，实其腹，弱其志，强其骨. With other contents of this chapter, these four sentences reflect Lao Tzu's attitude toward materialistic civilization. Lao Tzu was against the materialistic approach of society. So let me explain them word by word. 虚 means purify, empty. 其 means theirs, indicates people. 心 means mind, soul. 实 means feeling. 腹 means stomach, belly. 弱 means to weaken, to soften. 志 means will, ambition. 强 means to strengthen, and 骨 means bone. Put together, the translation of these sentences is: Therefore, the sage rules by purifying people's souls, filling their bellies, weakening their wills, and strengthening their bones. End translation. Lao Tzu used these four sentences to express his concept about how to administer the people by letting them be innocent with no desire, free from elite interference. In other words, manage nothing with one another, and all are managed on their own. It also reflects the Wu Wei or non-action concept. So, among these four sentences, the first two sentences, which are 虚习心，实其腹, or purify people's souls, filling their bellies, are used more often instead of the four entire sentences. Very often, people just say 虚心实腹, or purify the soul and fill the bellies. Now, let me explain the application of these four sentences in Xiudao practice. Actually, these four sentences talk about the four important aspects of energy refinement. The first sentence, 虚其心, means that in Xiudao practice, one has to empty one's mind to prepare it to enter the mystery gate, which is the process to cultivate the spirit. 实其腹 tells us in Xiudao practice, one should strengthen one's energy level. Here, energy means primordial energy, not postmordial one. The third sentence, 弱其志, means that energy circulates in the whole body after the spirit and the energy merge as one, which is the moment when the mind gets stabilized and is in a neutral state. The last sentence, 强其骨, means that the whole body gets nourished and becomes stronger, after the spirit is as solid as the mountain and the energy is as smooth as the wind. So it is about the spirit, energy, mind, and body, which are the four elements in 修道 practice. To reach this level, one has to focus on the whole body's energy and refine it to a better level through practice by applying the non-action approach, or 无为. To summarize, 虚心 or purify the spirit, 实服 or strengthen the primordial energy, 弱智 or soften the mind, and 强骨 or strengthen the whole body's energy are the four important aspects of reaching the ideal 修道 state. With that, let's dive right into today's main topic, different schools of 修道. Topics covered in today's video include: first, development stages of Taoist elixir practice. Second, major schools of Taoist elixir practice. Third, two main approaches to practice. Fourth, takeaways. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Topic 1. Development stages of Taoist elixir practice. It is very important to know the historical information of the Taoist elixir practice. Without understanding this topic, it is almost impossible for a practitioner to understand their practice in terms of development background and their interrelationships. It is also a must-have for a qualified practitioner. In Chinese history, the development of the Taoist elixir practice can be traced back to more than 2,000 years ago. Overall, there were two types of Taoist elixir practices: external elixir and internal elixir methods. The external elixir method, or 外丹法, involves using different materials in nature to produce an elixir pill, or 丹药, through a complicated process. The internal elixir method involves cultivating inner energies to reach 内丹, or inner elixir. Since the external elixir method often used toxic materials like cinnabar and others, the external elixir practice gradually retreated from the historical stage. But for thousands of years, these two methods have coexisted since the beginning of the Taoist elixir practice. Unfortunately, the external elixir practice was the dominant practice in the beginning. It was only about 1,000 years ago, with sufficient time and development, that the internal elixir practice gradually replaced the external elixir practice to become the dominant practice. So, in the early stage of Taoist elixir practice, practitioners first looked into the relationships between human beings and the external world. In other words, practitioners tried to grasp the strength from the universe into the human body. Gradually, practitioners started to focus their attention and effort in looking for the relationships between human beings and their inner powers. In other words, they turned their focus inward. This gradual change indicates the evolution of the internal elixir practice, which eventually became a well-developed system. During this millennium, many great practitioners have contributed their lifetime experiences toward developing promoting and disseminating this belief-based as well as practice-based system. A very interesting phenomenon is that in this process, terms used in external elixir practice were borrowed to describe the internal elixir practice, which further confounded the system to practitioners. For example, terms such as fire, wind, mercury, lead, and many more were originally used in the process of burning and refining the external elixir pills, and later were directly adopted as is to describe the internal elixir practice. I have talked about this topic in many prior Shudao videos. Link to my Shudao playlist is in the description. This lecture will focus on the internal elixir practice or 内丹. Information introduced from now on will concentrate on the internal one. Based on practice and research experience, I have classified the overall Taoist internal elixir practice into 3 stages in chronological order. The first stage is the period before the Tang Dynasty, approximately about 1,000 years ago. The second stage goes from the Tang Dynasty about 1,000 years ago to the end of the Qing Dynasty about 100 years ago. The third stage goes from the end of the Qing Dynasty about 100 years ago to the present day. In the first stage, the period before the Tang Dynasty, even though there had been many great practices and documents produced already, the system in general was still in its primitive stage, since its concept and practice were not well structured and developed. The second stage, which lasted about 1,000 years, starting from the end of the Tang Dynasty to the end of the Qing Dynasty, is actually the most important period of the internal elixir practice, which will be the focus of today's video. The third stage is a period of time in which this practice gradually lost its popularity. However, some important events did occur in the third stage, which I will keep for future video. To summarize, this video will introduce the second stage of the internal elixir practice, which is indeed the most important stage in terms of the development of the system that lasted about 1,000 years. During this time, many great practitioners created, developed, and promoted their specific methods through different schools of internal elixir practice. So, what were those different schools? That brings us to the next topic. Topic 2. Major schools of Taoist elixir practice. Before going any further, bear in mind that the word school I'm using here does not mean a physical school, but a school of thought and practice, or style. To start off, we have to introduce 2 important names in Taoist history, Zhong Liquan and Lui Dongbin. They were legendary Chinese figures and were also considered immortals in Taoist history. Actually, both of them were real people in history, especially Zhong Liquan, a military general in the Han Dynasty, since records for Lui Dongbin are not as clear and consistent as those for Zhong Liquan. Together, they are considered the creators of Zhong Lui Danfa, Zhong and Lui elixir method. Zhong means Zhong Liquan and Lui means Lui Dongbin. So the following schools are all based on this system, the Zhong Lui elixir method. Even though the Zhong Lui method was not well developed compared to those of later schools, it was nonetheless the foundation for all later development. I will talk more about this school in the future. In this section, I will introduce 5 major schools and also mention some other newly developed schools. The 5 major schools are Nanzong or Southern School, Beizong or Northern School, Zhongpai or Middle School, Dongpai or Eastern School, and Xipai or Western School. Let's talk about each of them. The first school is Nanzong or the Southern School. Zhang Boduan, who lived from 984 to 1082, is often considered the founder of this school. He was originally a military officer who later became a Taoist practitioner in his 60s. He was the author of Wu Zhen Pian, Understanding the Reality, one of the most important Taoist practice documents in history. In the Southern School, Zhang laid the groundwork for the system and became well developed 4 generations later under Bai Yuchan. Lineage-wise, Zhang Boduan taught Shitai, Shitai taught Xue Daoguang, Xue Daoguang taught Chen Nan, and Chen Nan taught Bai Yuchan. These 5 practitioners are collectively called Nan Wu Zu or Southern 5 Ancestors in Taoism. Also, Southern School practice became well developed after Bai Yuchan's work, so some people consider Bai Yuchan to be the founder of this school. The Southern School focuses on the concept of 先命后性. 先 means first, 命 means life, energy, 后 means later, and 性 means nature, spirit. Put together, it means first cultivate the energy and then the spirit. The second school is Beizong or the Northern School. It is the one that has the most practitioners in both history as well as today. Its founder was Wang Chongyang in the Jin dynasty. Wang Chongyang lived from 1113 to 1170. Wang's 7 disciples, Ma Yu, Qiu Chuji, Tan Chuduan, Wang Chuyi, Hao Datong, Liu Chuxuan, Sun Bu'er, are collectively called Quan Zhen Qizi or Total Reality 7 Masters. All of them created their own styles of practice based on their teacher, Wang Chongyang's teachings. The Northern School focuses on the concept of 先性后命, the opposite approach compared to the Southern School. It first focuses on cultivating the spirit and then cultivating the energy. The Northern School used the term 降心炼性 to describe its practice. 降 means tame, 心 means mind, 炼 means cultivate, 性 means nature. Put together, it means one should tame one's mind and cultivate one's nature. Also, the Northern School promoted the concept of merging Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism together in self-cultivation, which was a new concept in its time. Also, bear in mind that even though both Southern and Northern schools emphasized different steps in cultivating the energy and the spirit, they both eventually returned to the fundamental idea of 性命双修 or cultivation of both 性 and 命. They are different only in the beginning and eventually converge in practice. The third school is Zhongpai or the Middle School. The word 中 or middle reflects the practice approach used by this school. This school focuses on the 中脉 or middle channel. In practice, Zhongpai emphasizes the concept of 玄关 or mystery gates, which I have introduced in prior videos. So the term 玄关性命之根本 or the mystery gate is the root of life and nature, is the foundation of that school. Philosophically, the middle school borrowed a lot of concepts from Confucianism. In other words, it's the Taoist practice with the Confucian influence. Huang Yuanji from the Qing dynasty is considered a Zhongpai master. Also, the famous Taoist book 性命归止 is actually considered the middle school book as well. So the middle school is the practical method based on the middle approach. The fourth school is Dongpai, or the Eastern School. Its founder Lu Xixing lived from 1520 to the early 1600s. Lu Xixing used the method of 男女双修 or male and female practice together. The concept of that style is that at a certain age, your own energy is insufficient, and you need to mutually borrow energy from others in order to generate the internal elixir. Bear in mind that this practice is not the Fang Zhongshu, the so-called sexual energy Qigong. Lu Xixing himself emphasized it in his teaching. On a related note, do check out my video on the topic of Nui Danfa, or female elixir practice. Link is in the description. Lu Xixing also followed the concept of 性命双修, or the cultivation of both 性 and 命. The fifth school is Xipai, or the Western School. It was founded by Li Hanxu, who lived from 1805 to 1856, less than 200 years ago. Li Hanxu claimed to have practiced with Lui Dongbin, the immortal, whom I introduced at the beginning of this section. Li Hanxu also claimed to be the Hou Shen, or later body of Lu Xixing, the founder of the Eastern School, the one I just introduced. Theoretically, that school actually is the combination of the Zhonglui elixir method and the Eastern School. So, those were the 5 major schools of Taoist elixir practice. Now, let me introduce some other schools that are smaller compared to these 5 major ones. First, Wu Liu School. Wu and Liu are the names of 2 people. Wu means Wu Chongxu and Liu means Liu Huayang. They created their practice based on the Northern School. That school was very popular in the Ming Dynasty, but gradually became less popular due to later schools. Second, Qianfeng School, a very popular school back in the last century. Another new school based on the Northern School. And based on my research and experience, it is based more on the Wu Liu School, the one I mentioned right before. Third, Sanfeng School, under the name of Zhang Sanfeng, the Wudang Taoist priest. Zhang Sanfeng also emphasized the unity of the 3 teachings of Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. His name has been one of the most popular names in the Taoist community. There are also other names worth mentioning, such as Qiancheng and so on. Since they are not as popular as these popular schools, I will keep them from today's video. I have to tell you that there is no such connotation that one school is better than the others. Yes, some schools are popular due to historical reasons, such as the Northern School. Some schools are not that popular, such as the Middle School. However, they all are excellent in terms of practice. all those schools developed not only due to their founders, but also due to contributions by later generations to improve and refine their practice and teaching. The only issue is to find the right one for you in practice, and that is another deep topic, which I will talk about in the future. Now, what are the two main approaches in practice? That brings us to the next topic. Topic 3. Two main approaches to practice. I'd like to introduce a term used to describe the practice approach in terms of progress. It is 顿渐, a term consisting of two words with opposite meanings. 顿 means immediate, fast, while 渐 means gradual, slow. So, people often use the terms 顿法 or immediate method and 渐法 or gradual method to describe the progress in elixir practice. If you take the terms at face value, you may think 顿法 or the immediate method is the right method for you since it can help a practitioner reach a good level quickly. Well, sounds too good to be true, and it really isn't. For most people, indeed. Some documents say that if you focus on the spirit, then it will be the immediate method. Well, when you focus on the lower dantian, then it would be considered the gradual method. Will focusing on a specific area make your practice render results immediately or gradually? If it is that simple, why don't everyone apply the immediate method? Let me explain this now. Some ancient Xiu Dao documents provide some insight into these two methods, and very often some specific method would be introduced in those documents. However, people would not achieve the result even though they followed that method. Why is that? Well, understanding Xiu Dao practice takes a lot of effort in terms of reading, studying, experiencing, and testing. It is almost impossible for anyone to not make any mistakes in practice. So, during the experiencing and practicing time, is it an immediate method or even when you have to try different method? Well, let me also answer it. It may be called immediate method, but in reality, it is the gradual method. It is just the nature of a Xiu Dao practice. Also, according to a different Taoist belief, the immediate method is actually suitable to those who have yet to reach puberty. Very often, this was the precondition in ancient times for one to use this immediate method to reach a good result. It was not meant for everyone, so please think and decide for yourself if you should use the gradual method. There is an exception. If someone possesses a lot of knowledge already and begins practice, then it may be possible to use the immediate method. Furthermore, I'd like to point out that Tao's elixir practice has many objectives like self-cultivation, health, gaining wisdom, and managing one's own destiny after death through nourishing one's primordial spirit or yuanshen. As long as you make progress in practice, you should not be too concerned about which method you are applying. Let the energy and the spirit work by themselves. So, that was a brief introduction to the two approaches, the immediate method and the gradual method. I hope you will focus on the later one, and maybe the first one will naturally occur. Topic 4. Takeaways. First, development stages of Dao's elixir practice. Dao's elixir practice, or Xiu Dao, has 1,000 years worth of history, which can be divided into different development stages according to its specific practical approaches. The golden age of this system lasted about 1,000 years. Second, major schools of Dao's elixir practice. The 5 major schools are Nanzong or Southern School, Beizong or Northern School, Zhongpai or Middle School, Dongpai or Eastern School, and Xipai or Western School. Also, there are some other schools such as Sanfeng, Wuliu, and so on. All of them are equally effective in providing a specific method to those who are more suited for it. Third, 2 main approaches to practice. The 2 main approaches to practice are Dunfa or immediate method and Jianfa or gradual method. I recommend you focus on the gradual method. That brings us to the end of today's video. Thanks for watching, see you next time, and enjoy your practice.